Hey guys, welcome to Rome Architect. Today we're going to learn how to do a one-point perspective drawing using only Photoshop and Sketchup. So the first thing I want to do is open up my Sketchup and I'm going to export two scenes. One of them is only going to be of shadows, so go ahead and turn off all your lines and turn on the shadows. Make sure that you find a nice angle and turn the opacity all the way up. The second scene you want to do is a hidden line only scene, which basically means that you want to turn off any kind of effect and you just want to leave the rough lines of the model that you have on SketchUp. Export this file as a PDF and export shadows file as a PNG. Now you're gonna go ahead and import your PDF into Photoshop, and to that you're gonna import the PNG. Just turn down the opacity for the shadows so you can see the lines behind it and just make sure everything is aligned. And before starting to do anything to the file, you want to look at the size of the file. If it's too big, just scale down the canvas and make it smaller. I made mine 11 by 11 inches. That way you can prevent the Photoshop file from becoming too large. Now, when you're preparing any kind of perspective drawing, this is more than just showcasing the architectural experience and design. This is sort of like an art piece. Think of the canvas size, the framing, and the canvas ratio, taking into consideration all the design principles you know of, such as balance, scale and proportion, pattern, texture, and others. Now, whenever you import a texture, which you can just download from Google, you want to make sure that the texture follows the same perspective as the rest of the drawing. That's really going to make a difference. That's the key element that makes your drawing somewhat realistic. Now, when you want to adhere the texture to the shape, what you want to do is use the clipping masks tool. So basically you create the layer of the texture like I'm doing here right now. You go to the layer of the lines. You select all the area that you want your texture to appear in. Then you go back to the layer from the texture you imported and you hit the clipping mask icon. That way the texture only shows on the areas you selected. Now here's something important. Because you are selecting the spaces from where your texture is going to show, that means the more lines you have, the more time it's going to take you to select each of those individual spaces. For me right now, the mullions were stuck out a little. That means that I had to select each one of those individual lines in order for my clipping mask to work. So if you're on a budget, make sure that your model doesn't have a lot of lines, because usually the more lines, that means the more time it's going to take you to mask everything properly. Now for the shadows, here's a nice trick that you can do if you have windows. Naturally on SketchUp, if you have windows, the shadows from behind are going to show half tone. So what I did on Photoshop, I separated the shadows from the front to the shadows from behind into two separate layers. And then I took the shadows from the front and making it all the way black so I can turn down the opacity as I please. And the shadows on the back, I put them behind the glazing layer for the windows. That way there is an illusion that there's something behind the windows and not just a blank page. So a lot happened just now. First, this cloud brushes, I'm gonna link them on the description below, so feel free to download them. I really like them. I use them for all my projects. Now, something that I decided for my composition was a contrast between blue and red. So I went ahead and added a layer on top of the brick pavement layer to make the red pop out even more. And then I went ahead and altered the blue layer for the sky and made it bluer. What I also did was to grab my line layer and turn all the lines white. That makes a better contrast with the style of drawing that I'm making. And I also wanted to differentiate more the sky from the buildings, so I went ahead with the pen tool and drew a bolder edge to the building. Now, when it comes to adding vegetation or people or any sort of prop, there are two things that I want to point out. The first is technical, which is that even though you got a PNG, you're gonna have a white background. First, you want to take care of the bigger white openings. Of course, you want to take care of the outside background, and everything that is on the inside, just focus on the main things. I recommend you scale the image down to what you think it's gonna be, and then go back to see if you can actually see the white, unless you want to spend a lot of time taking care of all those things. I don't think it's really worth it. So you're gonna see me make sort of mistakes, but I'll just leave them there because this is a fast composition, and also I just don't think people are gonna get close enough to this image that they're gonna notice so much. The second point I want to make is compositional. Use the images that you download to add motion, liveliness to your composition. Humans, for example, are the perfect tool to add scale to the drawing. Having a human makes the viewer understand how big the space truly is. And having humans on different planes helps the viewer understand the depth of the composition and the space. Also, use these images to help with the balance. On my case, because there's a strong shadow on the bottom right of my drawing, I needed to put a lot of effort on the left side. That's why you're gonna see me put a lot of the props and images on that side. That's why I added the branch of the trees on the top left to sort of help balance the composition. Also, you have to make sure that you add shadows to at least the main figures of the composition. So, of course, the main figure of this composition is the tree on the middle. So I wanted to make a shadow out of it. So the way you do that is you copy the tree layer, color it all black, and you want to transform that layer so it sort of follows the perspective angle on the ground. If you have different levels that the shadow touches, you're just gonna cut the shadow where one level ends. You're gonna drop it down and cut it again to meet with the bottom of the next level, and so on. Another thing you have to take into account when you drop in images is the light source position. These images have usually a generic light source, so you have to make sure that you incorporate the shadows and lights onto the images. That's why I added a highlight on the tree by creating a new layer, having a brush overlay the tree area that I wanted to highlight, and then coming back with the eraser tool to create more contrast between the branches of the tree. Now, because I added that shadow on the tree, now the composition has another balance issue. Now there's weight pulling down towards the middle left bottom side. Because of this, I added some birds that not only gives life to the sky, but also helps counterbalance that big shadow on the bottom left side. And finally, after you're satisfied with the composition, you want to make sure that you make all the adjustments necessary to the overall image, and don't be shy to go back and forth between your adjustments and the layers on your composition. Now, if the file is too big, do not hesitate to reduce it I showed you a comparison between the original file and the reduced file, and it's like 20 megabytes of difference, and it basically looks the same. And that is it from me, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Please leave a like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.